Hello everyone, Jules here, and before we begin, I just want to really give a quick shout out to Skillshare, who are now working with us here on What Culture Comics to help you access all sorts of awesome classes. But you know what? More on that later. Much like Star Wars, Marvel, and Disney in general, the Batman brand is one that tends to inspire its own world of over-enthusiastic fandom. And as fans and media race to feed that excitement, it's inevitable that some half-truths and untruths ended up being peddled out as fact. So let's take a look at some of these urban legends, and indeed about some of them that turned out to be true. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 of the most notorious Batman urban legends. Number 8. Batman's 1966 set was an orgy, and Burt Ward did porn. In 1991, former boy wonder Burt Ward released a tell-all expose of his time as Robin, which effectively painted a picture of the set as being a constant orgy, fueled by free-running sex and debauchery. One interview released at the time, selling the book to potential audiences, included a raft of lurid revelations, though all introduced with the caveat that it was in the 60s after all, and everyone was bonking everyone else, so therefore it was fine. And this is what he had to say. I mean, when you come into the set at 7:30 in the morning and you come out of makeup and the first thing you know, the ladies start coming into our dressing rooms at 7:45. We're talking about wild times in the dressing rooms, on set, between the shots, in the lunch wagon. When we got home at night after 14 hours on set, I think we redefined the meaning of the word pleasure pad. And of course, doing the personal appearances on the weekend, that's where it really got wild. And I have to be honest with you, we became like sexual vampires. It all sounds too weird to be true, right? Well, partly because it was. Later, presumably after cashing his check from the book sales, Ward admitted that he was goaded by the publishers to make the book more interesting, and just made most of it up, including his vengeful claims of West's failure to perform sexually. So yeah, it was true, but also then not true. Number 7. There was supposed to be a Dark Knight tie-in video game. Before the Batman Arkham games were released to massive critical acclaim, there was apparently going to be a tie-in game for The Dark Knight that would have been released in June 2008. Now, it wasn't widely publicized and began to take on the label of being an urban legend when it didn't start to materialize. It was particularly talked about in those terms because the only mention of it publicly came from Gary Oldman, and that was by accident. The truth is that the game did actually exist, but was killed by Star Wars Battlefront developer Pandemic failing to hit their schedule. The release date was pushed back to December 2008 in order to suit the Blu-ray release, but they still failed to deliver, and the game was then cancelled, leaving behind a bill of $100 million and a few whispering glimpses of what could have been. Number 6. Christian Bale was asked to return for Batman vs Superman. Because everyone was so sad about the end of Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, fans took it upon themselves in the early days of Batman v Superman's production to fabricate some rumors about the series' links to the new chapter. Nolan was linked to directing for a while by hopeful chances, and there was a time where the internet was awash with attempts to paint the stories together seamlessly. Even more excitingly for fans, it was said that Christian Bale was even approached to pull on his bat cowl again, proving that the films were indeed set in the same universe. I mean, that did ignore the fact that such claims are absolute bullshit, because Bale told Esquire that the rumours he was offered an eye-watering amount to return were as off-base as him playing James Bloody Bond. He said, "No, I've never heard of that. Equally untrue about them coming to me for Batman before Ben Affleck. I think it's the right decision. People were talking about this obscene amount of money they were saying was thrown at me. No, I didn't have a single conversation with anybody about ever playing the role again." Hello. So at the start of the video, I told you that What Culture Comics has partnered up with Skillshare in order to offer you all sorts of technical classes on art and illustration, graphic design, filmmaking and editing, and much, much more. And I personally love this sort of stuff because I suck it all up into my giant oversized head so I can look like bloody Brainiac by the end of things. But now I want to be able to share that with you. Yes, you, even you at the back. Skillshare is a huge online learning community with thousands of classes. And personally, I've recently been using the iPhone Filmmaking Create Cinematic Video with Your Phone classes that are hosted by Caleb Babduck and Niles Gray. Now, these guys are great. They're really likable for a start, which makes learning with them very easy, but they go through all of the basics, including the limitations and advantages of using your phone as a camera, as well as going over gear and apps, how to shoot, how to transfer your footage, and how to render and export at the proper settings. And you know what? I want you guys to fall in love with the experiences that I've already had with these classes, so we're offering What Culture viewers a free membership trial of Skillshare Premium for 1 entire month. Now, normally you only get 2 weeks, but we thought that you deserved a big old treat. So all you got to do is click the link in the description, and if you're one of the first 1,000 to do so, you'll get unlimited access to thousands of classes from quality teachers for an entire month absolutely free. So whether you're a certified pro like myself who's just looking to brush up their already awesome skills, or a passionate hobbyist just looking to give something new a go, make a mess of the place, we'll clean it up later, then this is most definitely for you. So like I said, go down to the description and click the link there to find out more. Just want to say a massive thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring us, and there are going to be many more classes that we're going to detail over the coming months. But right now, let's get back on with the fresh, juicy content. I assume it's me who's doing the video, so back to me! Number 5. Bob Kane purposefully diminished Bill Finger's role in creating Batman. Now, it sounds awful, particularly now that DC has started crediting Bill Finger as co-creator of Batman, but Bob Kane spent a lot of effort crushing the perception that Finger was as important to the character's creation as he was. He consciously and very publicly called out those claims as incorrect, threatening to sue those who published them. Infamously, he sent a letter to fanzine Batmania's editor stating in no uncertain terms that it was all hogwash. I, Bob Kane, am the sole creator of Batman. I created Batman in 1939 and I signed the first strip. The long letter called such accusations fraudulent and entirely untrue, mostly because the original Batman strip carried only Kane's name in the byline, as if that was some sort of concrete indication. And this is what he had to say. The truth is that Bill Finger is taking credit for much more than he deserves. I created the title, masthead, the format and concept, as well as the Batman figure and the costume. Robin, the Boy Wonder, was also my idea, not Bill's. The only proof I need to back my statement is that if Bill co-authored and conceived the idea either with me or before me, then he would most certainly have a byline on the strip along with my name, the same as the creators of Superman. It's all pretty cutting to read, and the intent to diminish influence, particularly in context of what happened later, is discomforting to say the least. To give Kane his due, in his 1989 autobiography Batman and Me, he did eventually concede that Finger was a contributing force in the series, saying, "I must admit that Bill never received the fame and recognition that he deserved." Yeah, well, thanks to you, mate. Number 4. Batman was almost cancelled in the 1960s. After flagging sales at the start of the 1960s, DC played with the idea of cancelling the character altogether, and that character was teetering in 1963 before the introduction of the new look by new editor Julius Schwartz. But consider the context of this. At the time, Batman was still all over DC's covers and was still featuring heavily in World's Finest. He was far from considered toxic, and he remained the flagship even as he was supposedly circling the drain. The reality is that the new look, which coincided with the 300th issue, was a marketing ploy. According to the excellent Silver Age Comics blog, Batman was still the 10th best-selling comic in 1962, outselling JLA or Flash or Green Lantern and 20 other mags that DC was publishing at the time. That excellent rundown pours scorn on the idea of cancellation, instead looking at it like a necessary reshuffle, which is actually far more likely. Interestingly though, Gerard Jones's Men of Tomorrow claims that Bob Kane's 1947 contract stipulated that he'd retain all the rights to the character if Batman was ever cancelled. Would DC really have handed over the rights in total and forever? Very, very unlikely. Number 3. The delayed explosion scene in The Dark Knight was ad-libbed. As a mark of Heath Ledger's genius performance as the Joker in The Dark Knight Rises, the story goes that he ad-libbed one of the film's most notorious scenes when Mr. J tries to blow up a hospital but is foiled by a faulty remote. Now, rumour always had it that the malfunction was unintentional, and Ledger styled it out so well that it made it into the final film, which is a nice, romantic myth, but unfortunately, it's a made-up one. As revealed in the film's Blu-ray special editions, the scene was shot as it was shown in the final cut, and the delay was actually deliberate, in order to allow Ledger to be right next to the building when he tried to blow it up first. The scene was endlessly rehearsed according to in-film focus point description, which specifies 12 different dry runs. So yes, it might have been ad-libbed in rehearsal, but what we see clearly isn't an in-the-moment improvisation. Number 2. Bill Murray almost played Batman. As the internet will tell you, Bill Murray was really close to being cast as Batman in Tim Burton's 1989 Batman, which surely would have changed everything about the dark movie. But the truth is a little bit more complex. It wasn't Burton who would have cast Murray at all, and the film that he could have starred in was mostly unrecognizable from Burton's final flick. Instead, Murray was targeted by Ivan Reitman, who also wanted to cast Eddie Murphy as Robin and was attached to Tom Mankiewicz' The Batman, which was written in 1983. It went through at least 9 separate rewrites, and eventually Burton was hired after the success of Pee-wee's Big Adventure in 1985, at which point he rejected Tom Mankiewicz' script as being too campy, so there was no way that he entertained the Murray link either. And number 1, playing the Joker killed Heath Ledger. According to the narrative that swirled around Heath Ledger's death, particularly thanks to the revelation of his personal Joker diary, his experience shooting The Dark Knight caused him permanent mental trauma. He was left with insomnia after channeling his dark side too closely and required sleeping pills in order to get to rest. This was pointed out as being the air quotes reason for his death, adding a mythology to his performance that arguably makes it even more astonishing. But his sister says that that is plain untrue. Speaking to the Daily Telegraph as documentary I Am Heath Ledger was on the verge of premiering, she said, "I spoke to him the night before he died, and we were laughing and joking. He was so proud of what he had done in Batman, and I know he had plans for another Batman. He loved working with Chris Nolan and Christian Bale and Gary Oldman. He just had the best time doing that film. When he came home at Christmas, he couldn't wait to tell us all about it, and he was doing the voice and laughing, showing me all of the rushes. We had a great time." She denies that he died because of the role, even as Jack Nicholson revealed that he allegedly warned Ledger about using Ambien after he almost drove off a cliff while using them himself. So yes, it's a sad tale, but maybe attributing his death to the role is a bit of a stretch. And there we go, my friends. Those were 8 of the most notorious Batman urban legends. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.